Some traps arrive in your mailbox with confetti ink and a smile. Some traps arrive when grief leaves the front door unlocked. My name is Caleb Monroe, 72 years old, American, widowed, retired state auditor from Michigan, the kind who spent decades following money through budgets, contracts, and glossy brochures that hid ugly numbers in fine print. A career built on patience, a career built on receipts. Then my receipts turned into hospital forms. Marlene died in late winter, the season that turns the sky into a sheet of dull metal. Pneumonia at first, then complications, then a fast chain of decisions that felt like being rushed down a hallway with no doors. The hospice team arrived with calm voices and soft shoes. The house filled with equipment that hummed and clicked. Every machine sounded like it was measuring the distance between us and the end. The final night came with a weird kind of quiet. The furnace kicked on and off. The refrigerator made a faint buzzing sound. The neighborhood dogs barked far away, then stopped. Marlene's breathing slowed into a rhythm that felt borrowed from somewhere else. In the last hour, the air in the bedroom turned thick, like the room was holding its own breath. When it ended in a single moment that felt both sharp and unreal. A final exhale, a pause, a new silence that did not belong in a living house. The hospice nurse checked for a pulse with hands that had done it many times, the motion gentle and efficient. The nurse's expression carried sympathy, but also the tired professionalism of someone who carries other people's endings from home to home. After the funeral, the world kept moving like I had only stepped out for a haircut. Neighbors returned to mowing lawns, the mail arrived. Sports highlights played on televisions in living rooms all over the street. My kitchen stayed clean because I stopped cooking. My living room stayed quiet because I stopped turning on music. Every habit that used to connect me to Marlene turned into a sharp corner. Loneliness creates gravity. It pulls the mind toward anything that feels like company. A flyer, a phone call, a room full of voices, a plate of warm food that smells like normal life. In the first months after the funeral, I kept replaying small scenes like a person rereading a book because the ending hurts too much. Marlene at the sink rinsing blueberries. Marlene tapping a pencil against a grocery list. Marlene leaning her head against my shoulder during a storm, the thunder making her flinch and laugh at herself. The mind grabs those moments because everything else feels like fog. I used to think my job prepared me for anything. I had audited nonprofits that siphoned donations into consulting fees. I had watched small towns overpay contractors because someone's cousin ran the bidding process. I had seen school boards fall for slick vendors selling student wellness programs that amounted to expensive pamphlets. But grief is a different kind of fraud. It steals the part of you that recognizes danger early. It makes you soft in the wrong places. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, wedged between a grocery coupon booklet and the electric bill. Congratulations, you are a winner. Bright red ink. Starbursts on the border. A cheerful photo of an older couple holding balloons. The letter claimed a senior appreciation lottery, sponsored by something called the Lakeshore Wellness Foundation. Prize options included a flat-screen television, a weekend getaway, or a prepaid grocery card worth $500. The phrase "no obligation" appeared 3 times, like the writer knew exactly what the reader feared. The event location printed in bold. Harborview Senior Center, 40 minutes away, right off the highway. The time window, Thursday at 6 p.m. A note about a complimentary dinner. A requirement to bring the letter for verification. A normal me would have thrown it away without a second thought. Marlene would have laughed and put it straight into the recycling bin. Marlene had a gift for spotting polished manipulation. Her instincts were better than my spreadsheets. But grief makes ordinary things feel different. The free dinner sounded like warmth. The senior center sounded like voices. The drive sounded like purpose for one evening. And the sponsor name carried a detail that poked my old auditor reflex. Foundation. Foundations file paperwork. Foundations show up in public databases. Foundations, at least the real ones, leave tracks. That label softened my skepticism just enough for the trap to catch a toe. 2 days later, I drove to Harborview in my good sweater, the one Marlene liked, and shoes that still had shine on them. The sunset came early, the sky painted in pale gray and bruised purple. The drive felt longer than the map suggested, not because of distance, because of the weight of arriving alone. Harborview Senior Center looked new and friendly. Beige brick, wide glass entrance, a banner stretched across the doors. Senior Appreciation. Night, welcome winners. Inside, the air carried the smell of baked chicken and sweet rolls. Folding chairs surrounded round tables covered with blue plastic tablecloths. A small stage sat at the front with a projector screen. Soft music drifted from speakers. Volunteers moved with clipboards and practiced smiles, guiding people toward seats like ushers at a church service. The crowd ran older, mostly couples, a handful of widows, a few men alone, stiff-backed, scanning the room for exits even while their faces tried to look relaxed. Everyone carried the same fragile desire to belong to something for an hour. A name tag appeared in my hand. Caleb. A volunteer guided me toward a table already half full. 4 strangers and a plate of food, the kind of situation Marlene could turn into friends in minutes. Without her, I felt like I had lost my translation device for people. The white-haired man with a cane introduced himself as Ray, former electrician, a left knee that refused to cooperate. A voice that carried the tired humor of a person who spent decades working with his hands. Next to him sat Evelyn, careful makeup, delicate necklace, hands that kept twisting a napkin into a rope. Across the table, a couple held hands like a lifeline, Glenn and Marissa, both with matching silver rings and matching worry lines. Conversation stayed on the surface. Weather, traffic, grandkids, aches. The smiles were quick, the laughter thin, the silences filled fast. Every pause felt dangerous because a pause might invite grief into the chair. Dinner arrived in aluminum trays carried by young people in matching polos. Chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, a roll, a cookie. Nothing fancy. It did not need to be. Free food lowers defenses better than any speech. The smell of warm bread alone can pull an older person back toward hope. I watched how the volunteers moved. Friendly, efficient, always hovering near the people who looked unsure. Their body language carried a gentle kind of control. They guided chairs, guided plates, guided pens. It looked like kindness. It also looked like training. After plates were cleared, the lights dimmed. The projector hummed. A tall man in a tailored suit stepped onto the stage. Neat hair, bright teeth, a posture built for confidence. The first slide filled the screen. Financial safety for seniors. Protecting what you earned. The man moved through a familiar pattern. Empathy, fear, relief. Rising costs, fixed incomes, medical bills, scams everywhere. The room nodded, heads dipped, people relaxed. Fear shared in a group feels like truth. Slides followed quickly. Inflation charts, healthcare statistics, headlines about identity theft, stories about seniors losing money to strangers. Each story pushed the same emotional button. Nobody wanted to be fooled. Nobody wanted to be alone. Nobody wanted to become a burden. Then the smooth pivot toward the solution. A membership program, a protection plan, a private network of benefit specialists and advocates. a way to keep income stable and family conflict away, a shield against nursing homes, guardianship, and financial predators. The words used were soft and tender: dignity, independence, peace of mind, no burden on children. The logo appeared on the screen: Silver Shield Benefits Network. My spine tightened. A foundation hosting a membership network inside a senior center did not feel like charity. It felt like a business wrapped in a non-profit costume. A second presenter joined the stage, a woman in a blazer with a smile that looked professionally calibrated. The angle shifted toward family conflict and court nightmares. Adult children who mishandle money, caregivers who take advantage, judges who signed papers too quickly, facilities that drain savings. The presentation used real fears, then positioned Silver Shield as the only safe door out of the nightmare. A free benefit review became the hook: a private appointment, a folder of resources, a chance to claim the prize afterward. The room shifted. A free review sounded harmless. Personal attention sounded rare and comforting. Volunteers moved with clipboards again. Appointment slots appeared on paper. Checkboxes, time windows, requests for phone numbers and birth dates for eligibility. Eligibility for what remained vague, and that vagueness was the point. Ambiguity keeps targets from realizing they are signing the first step of a sales funnel. My form stayed blank. At my table, I watched Ray stare at the clipboard as if it was a contract in a foreign language. Evelyn's pen hovered above the paper, then trembled. Glenn and Marissa signed quickly, then looked relieved, as if signing itself was the action that prevented danger. A staff member walked past with a tight smile and pointed toward a prize table at the back. Stacks of boxes waited there like stage props. A staff member stood near the table with another clipboard. Prize verification required collecting a resource packet first. The packet included brochures, a glossy folder, and a membership overview sheet. The membership overview included a price: $2,400 for the first year, $19 per month after that for administrative maintenance. The number stood in my hands like an alarm bell. A charity event does not slip a $2,000 membership into the prize line like it is normal. A charity does not make your prize conditional on booking a private appointment. A banner near the exit displayed a slogan in silver letters: Protect your future without burdening your family. The phrase hit like a knuckle against a bruise. Marlene used to worry about being a burden even when she was healthy. Many older people carry that fear quietly. A scam can harvest it like a crop. I left with my prize letter still folded in my pocket. No television box, no grocery card, no membership. The night air outside felt cold and honest. The parking lot lights made everything look too sharp, like the world had turned into a high-contrast photograph. On the drive home, I passed the diner Marlene and I used to stop at after long trips. The neon sign flickered. My hands tightened on the wheel. For a moment, the free dinner at the senior center felt like a cruel echo of what I had lost. A meal in a room full of people, but no one who truly knew me. By the next morning, my phone started ringing. Unknown numbers, friendly voicemails, reminders about exclusive openings in my county, a countdown toward a discount deadline. Each message used my first name like a warm handshake. The calls continued for days, persistent and oddly personal. The voice on the line sounded patient, as if my reluctance was just confusion that needed gentle steering. Every message carried the same subtle pressure: urgency, scarcity, and a warning that safety required fast action. The old auditor reflex woke up fully. Lakeshore Wellness Foundation became my first search. A neat website appeared with smiling photos and mission language. The footer claimed nonprofit status. The donation button sat at the top. The event calendar displayed Harborview Senior Center. Everything looked clean enough to fool a casual glance. Casual glances are how seniors get trapped. Nonprofit filings are public, and filings do not care about glossy websites. I pulled the foundation's records. The numbers looked wrong. Low revenue, high consulting expenses, a structure that moved money outward rather than serving a mission. The registered address traced to a mailbox store near the airport. Board members shared last names with executives listed on the Silver Shield site. The Community Partners page showed logos that did not link anywhere. A fake ecosystem built to look real from a distance. Harborview Senior Center had given the scheme its most valuable asset: legitimacy. On Monday morning, I drove back to the center during daylight. The building looked innocent. A bulletin board displayed yoga schedules, craft classes, blood pressure checks. A receptionist smiled kindly from behind a desk. A question about the senior appreciation event brought a subtle shift. Not guilt, more like caution. The receptionist pointed toward a flyer that looked official, featuring the foundation logo. The receptionist mentioned room rentals as a funding source for programs. The receptionist mentioned donations, free meals, and resources that seniors enjoyed. Enjoyed? That word carried helplessness. Enjoyment is not the same as safety. The director's office sat down the hallway. The director, Linda Marsh, carried the tired posture of someone juggling 1,000 tasks and a shrinking budget. Linda listened and nodded. Funding challenges came up quickly. Room rentals kept programs alive. Vendors signed agreements. Disclaimers existed. The center did not endorse products. Endorsement and hosting are different words on paper. In a senior's mind, the building itself becomes the endorsement. Linda agreed to review the agreement. Linda also mentioned no formal complaints. Formal complaints rarely appear when victims feel embarrassed. Another flyer on the bulletin board caught my eye. Another wellness dinner scheduled for the next week. Different sponsor name, similar theme, similar promise. Harborview had become a marketplace for fear. Back home, my neighbor Joan Keller knocked on my door. Joan lived 2 doors down, late 70s, warm smile, always handed out extra Halloween candy even though no children lived on our hallway. Joan's husband died the previous year. Joan kept a small dog that barked at everyone in the elevator like it was guarding her from becoming invisible. Joan held a glossy folder and a gift box. Silver Shield folder. Television prize box. A signature page folded inside. Excitement on Joan's face battled embarrassment. The story came out in fragments. The dinner, the slides, the fear, the free review, the home visit. A specialist sat at Joan's kitchen table, reviewed her account statement, scanned her driver's license, copied her Medicare card, and nudged her toward membership before new rules changed eligibility. Joan wrote a check for $2,400. Joan signed an authorization form for benefit coordination. Joan felt proud for being proactive. Now, Joan felt uneasy. The specialist wanted another meeting with partner advisors and pushed for moving Joan's IRA into a safe income vehicle. The specialist pushed for adding Silver Shield as a contact on Joan's bank account for monitoring. Monitoring is a soft word for access. Joan's hands shook around the folder. Fear and shame blended into a tight knot. Joan needed safety first, not strategy. My daughter Hannah in Chicago worked in consumer protection law. Hannah listened without drama. A plan formed quickly. Stop the bleeding, document everything, avoid direct confrontation, build a victim record strong enough to move regulators. Joan's cancellation process became a test of the machine. The membership line kept Joan waiting with cheerful music. The first representative offered kindness and policy. Services had already begun, meaning refunds were limited. Administrative fees were non-refundable. Onboarding costs were non-refundable. Review costs were non-refundable. A ratchet, easy entry, hard escape. Hannah drafted a demand letter. Consumer protection language, senior exploitation language, unfair and deceptive practices, deadline, regulatory escalation, a firm tone without theatrics. The response came fast. A supervisor offered a partial refund, then store credit, then a membership pause. The offers were designed to keep cash inside the company. Then a new offer appeared. Full refund in exchange for a non-disclosure agreement. A non-disclosure agreement for a senior benefits program. A confession without words. Joan refused the hush paper. Courage filled the space where embarrassment used to live. The full refund arrived anyway, a check in the mail 3 days later. No apology, no explanation. Just money back, quietly, as if a mistake never happened. Quiet refunds keep schemes alive. Loud victims kill them. Joan became willing to help others. A notice went on our building bulletin board in simple print. Community meeting, protecting seniors from high pressure. Wellness, seminars, free, no sales, coffee and cookies, printed handouts, common tactics, urgency, prizes, fear stories, free reviews, requests for personal documents, arbitration clauses, cancellation traps, secrecy offers. 10 people attended the first night. 15 the next week. 25 the week after that. Stories surfaced like stitches pulled from cloth. A retired firefighter named Lou, who signed membership after his wife died and now faced relentless calls to move pension money. A couple who paid for membership and then faced a push toward a long surrender annuity with a cheerful Income Shield label. A former teacher whose checking account showed small recurring debits labeled maintenance, even after cancellation attempts. A widow who noticed her banking app contact information changed without her touching it. A veteran who discovered mail rerouting on a retirement account statement. Rerouting statements isolates victims. Isolation creates control. The pattern widened beyond Harborview. Silver Shield ran events at churches, VFW posts, community college rooms, even hotel conference rooms. The same meal, the same fear, the same clipboards, the same openings language. The operation was a pipeline. The next meeting brought new faces and new versions of the same injury. A woman named Teresa, mid-60s but exhausted, described a benefit specialist who stayed nearly 2 hours at her dining table. Teresa's pension numbers were treated like a puzzle that only the specialist could solve. The specialist framed every decision as urgent. Teresa left the meeting with a stack of papers and the feeling she had almost failed a test. A man named Harold described a partner advisor meeting at a hotel. Harold described charts that moved like magic. One line rising smoothly upward, one line dipping into a valley labeled risk, a shaded area labeled protection. Harold did not understand fees or surrender schedules. Harold understood only the emotional math. Protection equals safety, safety equals relief. The scheme's structure was built on that emotional math. Evidence needed to become undeniable. A new wellness dinner was scheduled at Harborview the following week. Linda allowed it to proceed, citing contract obligations and a need for fair access. A compromise appeared, extra disclaimers posted. Disclaimers do not stop pressure. My friend Paul Renshaw joined the effort. Paul retired from the Postal Inspection Service after decades of mail fraud and identity theft cases. Paul understood the way predators blend official-looking paper with psychological manipulation. Paul also understood chain of custody rules that keep evidence clean. Paul attended the next dinner with a small camera device clipped inside a shirt pocket. The senior center event ran in a public room with dozens of attendees, a stage, and a projector. The recording captured the presentation without invading private spaces. The presentation included a new slide that chilled the room. Guardianship risk, when family takes over. The presenter described scenarios where adult children file court petitions, claim cognitive decline, gain control of assets, and place parents in facilities. Real abuses exist. The scheme hijacked that truth to sell a product that created its own abuse risk, handing authority to strangers with commissions. The presenter pushed the audience toward distrust of family and reliance on independent advocates. Volunteers moved through the tables with clipboards, circling appointment times and guiding hands toward signature lines. The prize table sat waiting at the back, conditional like a leash. This time, I booked a home appointment. Not for advice, for documentation. Hannah agreed with strict limits. No personal documents shared, cameras set, Paul present as a friend, and every paper kept. A week later, the Silver Shield benefit specialist arrived at my door on the minute. Early 40s, professional outfit, binder, tablet, smile built to project trust. The specialist sat at my kitchen table and moved through empathy like a checklist. Loss of spouse, stress, fear, vulnerability. Then the document requests began. Bank statements, IRA statements, Social Security award letter, Medicare card, driver's license. The word verification floated over the requests like a veil, making access sound necessary. An authorization form landed on my table. Broad language, permission to contact financial institutions, permission to coordinate with partners, permission to act as a liaison with government programs. A signature line waiting at the bottom like a mouth. A polite refusal to provide documents. A request for all services in writing. A request for licensing information and partner disclosure. A request for commission disclosure. A request for data retention policy. A request for the arbitration clause explanation. A request for cancellation procedure in plain language. The specialist's posture tightened. The smile stayed, but the warmth drained. Pressure returned in a different form. Fear, medical costs, long-term care, Medicaid limits, estate recovery, probate delays, family conflict, nursing home placement. The message remained the same. Sign now for safety. The specialist slid a page forward with a limited-time discount and bonus gifts. Scarcity theater. Then the specialist tried a subtler angle. Identity and pride. Responsible people protect their families. Responsible people plan early. Responsible people join networks before it is too late. The pitch reframed hesitation as weakness. For a brief moment, the words landed. Grief makes a person hungry for the feeling of being responsible again. It makes you want to prove you still can handle life. I walked to the sink and ran water, letting the sound fill the room. Marlene used to do that when stress rose. A simple motion, a reset. The water reminded me that calm can be chosen. It reminded me that pressure is not love. The meeting ended without signatures. The specialist left behind a folder and a business card and a reminder that the discount window would close soon. After the door closed, Paul's expression carried the grim look of a man who recognized a classic harvest pattern in modern clothing. The operation was not a single scam. It was an assembly line. The evidence packet grew. Paul's recording captured guardianship fear tactics and conditional prize requirements. My cameras captured the home visit pressure and the authorization form language. Hannah compiled victim declarations with dates and payment methods. Nonprofit filings showed the shell structure. ND, A's in exchange for refunds, revealed hush strategy. Bank statements revealed recurring charges. A few victims provided copies of partner advisor proposals. The proposals looked like annuity presentations, high surrender periods, high fees, high commissions hidden behind income security. Still, the most powerful evidence often comes from a place beyond paper, the real environment where the upsell happens. Harold agreed to attend a follow-up meeting at a hotel and allow Paul to accompany him as a neighbor who likes details. Harold felt anxious, but also angry now. Anger gives courage. The hotel conference room smelled like coffee and carpet cleaner. A table held pastries and branded water bottles. A projector displayed a slide with Harold's first name and the words "Personal Income Plan." Two advisors sat at the front with tablets and leather folders. Their smiles were wide, their language smooth, their timing precise. Everything felt like a performance built to make an older person feel chosen. The presentation began with a familiar emotional sequence. Instability outside, stability inside, relief for the right person. The right person always resembled the target in the chair. Cautious, hardworking, family-minded, concerned about health costs, tired of uncertainty. Charts appeared showing a market shield and income floor. Scenarios. Hypothetical numbers. A shaded area labeled guaranteed. A neat line that never dipped. The guarantee word repeated like a lullaby. Then the catch emerged in small print. Surrender schedules, fees, riders, administrative costs. The advisors moved quickly past those, focusing on the comfort story. The process was designed to overwhelm. Older adults do not fail to understand because they are foolish. Older adults fail to understand because the presentation overloads the brain on purpose. Harold's hands trembled slightly as the advisors slid a signature page forward. Paul's camera captured it all: the charts, the language, the speed, the way questions were deflected into reassuring stories, the way urgency was introduced through limited rate windows and carrier changes. The meeting ended with a request for bank wiring instructions and copies of identification. Identity again, access again, control again. Harold did not sign. Harold left with a folder of glossy pages and a headache. Outside the hotel, Harold sat on a curb and stared at his hands, as if they belonged to someone else. Harold's voice broke into a quiet confession. The pitch had almost worked. Not because of ignorance, because the idea of relief felt like oxygen. Relief is the product. The contract is the packaging. Then the identity theft harm surfaced, right on schedule. Joan's credit monitoring service flagged an inquiry from a card issuer she never contacted. Another victim received a medical billing notice from a provider she never visited. Another noticed a new phone plan account opened in her name. Small moves, tests, probes. Paul recognized the pattern. Document harvesting combined with pipeline sales creates a second revenue stream. Even if the annuity pitch fails, the identity data still has value. Now, the case expanded beyond consumer deception. It touched potential criminal fraud. Reports went to law enforcement with the identity theft angle, and the evidence of document collection at home visits and seminar sign-ups. The process moved slower and quieter. Criminal cases have different thresholds. Still, the paper trail began. At the same time, the intimidation phase arrived. A legal letter appeared in my mailbox on thick paper from a firm with a downtown address. Defamation allegations, threats of lawsuit, demands to stop interfering with business relationships, demands to retract statements. The letter was meant to create fear. Fear makes older people retreat. Fear makes victims quiet. Fear keeps pipelines running. My old career trained me not to panic at letterhead. Legal threats without facts are smoke. Still, intimidation has weight when grief already makes the chest feel fragile. I held the letter in my hands and felt the old loneliness return for a moment, the feeling of being one person facing a machine. Then I remembered the faces in the community room: Joan, Lou, Harold, Teresa. The teacher who kept checking her bank account with a tremor. The veteran who felt ashamed to admit rerouted mail. The machine was larger than me. That also meant the machine could be fought with a larger group. Hannah reviewed the letter. Hannah's response went out with calm confidence, documenting truth, public interest reporting, and a warning about retaliation claims. Paul documented delivery. Delia documented it too, because intimidation becomes part of the story when it happens to a whistleblower. Silver Shield attempted a second intimidation move through the community itself. A complaint reached our building manager about harassment and unauthorized meetings. Someone attempted to paint the victim support group as troublemakers. The building manager hesitated, then backed off after documentation of the meeting's purpose and the public news coverage. Predators prefer darkness. Light makes their tactics clumsy. A local TV station picked up Delia's story next. Cameras showed the senior center entrance. The banner footage replayed. The phrase "no obligation" on the letter appeared on screen. A consumer advocate explained the psychology of prize-based funnels. A state official warned viewers to avoid sharing personal documents with benefit specialists who lacked clear licensing. Phones rang at our community room meetings after that. More victims, more patterns, more proof that the scam was not limited to one county. The turning point arrived at a state hearing in Tallahassee. Consumer protection officials held a public session about senior targeted marketing. Delia's reporting pushed the topic into sunlight. Regulators invited witnesses. Victims volunteered. I volunteered with binders. The hearing room looked nothing like a courtroom. No gavel, no robe, just a panel of officials, microphones, name placards, and rows of folding chairs filled with people holding folders like life rafts. Silver Shield representatives appeared too, suited and calm, with attorneys behind them and laptops open. Testimony began with victims describing the dinner funnel, the guardianship fear slide, the conditional prize requirement, the home visits, the requests for documents, the recurring charges, the hush agreements, the difficulty of cancellation. Voices trembled, then steadied. Embarrassment turned into anger, then into clarity. My turn came with structure. The funnel steps laid out clearly. 1. Prize letter with no obligation language. 2. Free dinner and trust borrowed from a community venue. 3. Fear. Heavy presentation designed to trigger urgency. 4. Clipboards and appointment slots framed as free reviews. 5. Conditional prize verification used as leverage. 6. Home visits collecting documents and authorization signatures. 7. Partner advisor upsell into high-fee products. 8. Arbitration and cancellation traps to reduce refunds. 9. Hush agreements offered during refund negotiations. 10. Rebranding after exposure. The corporate skeleton laid out clearly. Foundations with low revenue and high consulting expenses. Mailbox store addresses. Overlapping executive names across nonprofits and sales networks. Identical language across rebrands. Payment processors connected to recurring maintenance charges. Partner networks receiving commissions. Recordings played. Authorization form text displayed on screens. Arbitration and cancellation clauses highlighted. Foundation filings displayed beside the business network pages. The mailbox store address displayed as the registered home of multiple foundations. The panel's posture changed. Interest sharpened into action. Regulators pressed on licensing, commissions, data security, and the misuse of public venues. Silver Shield attempted to hide behind education language and disclaimers. Disclaimers do not erase coercion. Education does not require signature funnels. A nonprofit does not require hush agreements to return money. Weeks later, official actions followed. A cease and desist order against the foundation entity for deceptive marketing and unlicensed activity. Subpoenas for partner advisors and payment processors. A public warning issued to seniors statewide about prize-based benefit review seminars. A new rule proposal requiring community centers receiving public funds to vet third-party vendors and prohibit on-site sales disguised as charity. The machine did not vanish overnight, but the gears began grinding. Then came the first visible shockwave. Silver Shield attempted to hold a large senior wellness gala at a waterfront hotel ballroom, a bigger version of the dinner funnel with nicer lighting and more polished branding. The event was marketed heavily through mailers and social media ads targeting older demographics. The pitch was the same, just wrapped in nicer fabric. Delia learned about the gala through a tip. Our group moved quickly. Flyers went out to warn seniors. The hotel management received complaints. Regulators received the event details. Law enforcement received the identity theft concerns. The hotel hesitated, then allowed it to proceed with strict conditions and security, likely fearing a contract dispute. The gala became the stage where the scheme's confidence met the community's watchfulness. The ballroom filled with round tables, white linens, and plated meals. The crowd looked excited, dressed a little nicer than at the senior center, as if the evening was a special event. That excitement was the bait. A special event makes people feel valued. Scammers monetize the human need to feel valued. Our group attended quietly, not to disrupt, to observe. Paul recorded. Delia attended with a producer and a camera crew outside the ballroom. Regulators attended as observers. The presence of observers changes behavior, but not enough to erase the core tactic. The presentation began with applause cues and warm gratitude for our treasured seniors. Then the familiar fear sequence returned. Inflation, healthcare costs, guardianship nightmares, scam headlines. The audience leaned in. The pitch carried the tone of protection, like a blanket offered during a storm. Halfway through the presentation, staff moved through the room with clipboards again. The signature funnel began. Then the pressure hit a wall. A group of seniors near the back, people from our meetings, refused the clipboards and raised their brochures, pointing at the fine print in front of them. The energy in the room changed. Confusion rippled. A few attendees looked around with sudden uncertainty, as if the room itself had shifted under their feet. Near the entrance, hotel security exchanged quiet words with an event coordinator. Outside the ballroom, Delia's camera captured the moment regulators walked in with official identification and took seats. A few of Silver Shield's staff members noticed and stiffened. The presentation continued, but the confidence faded. The pitch shortened. The opening's language softened. The prize claim process became less aggressive. After the presentation, the private appointment tables still existed, but fewer people approached. The machine relies on momentum. When momentum breaks, the harvest shrinks. Within days of the gala, the cease and desist order expanded to cover the rebranded entity as well. Partner firms began cutting ties to avoid regulator scrutiny. Payment processors flagged recurring charges. The foundation's accounts faced freezes tied to investigation activity. The mailers slowed, then stopped. Refunds began reaching victims through settlements and negotiated pressure. Hush agreements weakened, phone calls reduced, events canceled. The pipeline narrowed. Harborview Senior Center held a community forum to rebuild trust. Linda apologized for the harm and described policy changes. Linda looked like someone who wanted to do right but lacked the tools until damage forced the issue. Many public institutions operate that way, underfunded, overwhelmed, and vulnerable to polished predators offering donations. The forum became a turning point for me personally. Grief had narrowed my world to silence. The scheme attempted to use that silence as a weapon. The fight turned silence into purpose. Marlene used to build community with cookies, names, and quiet care. I built community with binders, filings, and laws. The support group evolved into a standing program. Monthly senior safety night sessions rotated across buildings and churches. Hannah connected us to legitimate legal aid clinics. Paul trained volunteers on basic identity theft protection. Delia kept reporting on new scam variants, creating a constant beam of light that made rebrands harder. One afternoon, Joan's little dog barked in the hallway and Joan laughed. Real laughter, not nervous laughter. Lou brought cookies to a meeting and looked less haunted. The retired teacher stopped checking the mail with fear. Teresa slept through the night again without jumping at every unknown number. Harold regained control of accounts and stopped blaming himself for almost signing. A final letter arrived from the state months later, formal and simple, confirming our documentation contributed to enforcement actions and restitution efforts. It was not a victory parade, it was a receipt. Receipts matter. That original winner letter was never about a prize. It was a test of whether grief had made me easy to move. Grief did not make me easy. Grief made me watchful, and watchfulness kept more than my own wallet safe. It kept a community from being harvested in silence. If a bright envelope ever arrives offering a free dinner and a prize with no obligation, remember this. Obligation arrives later, in fine print, when your guard is down and your heart is tired. The safest prize is walking away. And thanks for watching. Don't forget, like and subscribe to my channel.